person who is dead weighs much more than a person who is alive. A person who is alive is much lighter. Why is a live person lighter than a dead person? Because the live person carries himself. In a sense, he lifts himself. So you will not really carry a person because he's carrying himself. Why doesn't he float on air? At least to a certain degree. This is only in the Arizal we say that. I say that there's no Isa carrying a person. In the Rabbanan there definitely is an Isa. This is the other say they think that Haidesis, that's what it means, that he's completely fit. But he's not. He's still considered committing an Isa to the Rabbanan. In fact, the same as the Isa to the Rabbanan is for any kind of Halacha which could be done by one person. And two people do this Halacha, and they are both Pater in the Isa and Chayim Rabbanan. Here, this act could not be done, could be done by one person. If two people take part in the work, first one person can carry the other one. Second person is helping to carry. They say that's right. So they're both doing the work of one, and therefore they did it also did it that with an ice. However, it is also an Aharon. This is the other so it's important to publicize the fact that people think that they carry a Shabbos, very grievous error, it should be rectified. We should be zircher to chai neisias atzmei. We should elevate ourselves chai, acting like a chai to medaber. Elevate ourselves to atzmei, to posek Hashem, to show Emes Hashem. Everybody be zircher to see. Be as we are saying, make up good.
Shabbos, Hilchos Shabbos, Hilchos Chinuch Kotten. We are deviating slightly today because of the occasion. One of the Bris speak about raising children properly. Since this is the first son born to Mordechai, you have to know how to raise a child. His only Kaddish says if you give the child a proper chinuch, then kiyaskin, at his older age, something will remain. You've got to give him a solid feeding of das, of religion, of mitzvahs, of ahavas Torah, ahavas shemayim, because generally throughout the years it wears off. You give him a lot when he's young, there is something remaining later on. So the Kodesh also teaches Chanar, Bedaika, which means that teach a child from his very inception a yud av, chesed, and din combined. Din means that ish b'chet yumas. A person commits a sin, he must pay for it very heavily. A child should be given the proper upbringing. If necessary, then the shavit also. It means to give a child corporal punishment is permissible according to the Torah. With a light matzura, a light strap, but he's got to be shown the light. However, if he does do wrong, teach him also that there is the inyan of tshuva. You couple din with chesed. It is a case of tshuva, and tshuva should be done the dafka when a person is very young. The pnei seva tokum. Before you become old, tokum, rise up and do tshuva v'yadarta pnei zokim. Then you'll beautify your old age. You'll have an old age which will not be ashamed of its own youth. The din of chinuch is to that though the Gemara says that the Bezdin is not mitzvah, if it sees a child committing a wrong, not mitzvah to stop the child, eating an item of which is a shayla, kashrus, and so on. But it is a chiyuv on the father, on the parent, to see that the child, no matter what age it is, no matter what age, even the child does not understand, there's no das in the child, not to feed that child the yadayim anything coming, because it will give a wrong type of blood, a wrong type of midas will be injected into the child. So it is a chiyuv upon the father and mother to see that the child is given an upbringing of kashrus from the day of birth, and especially on Shabbos. Especially on Shabbos, this is an item which the Elam is told. People err very seriously, very tragically about this, and thinking that a boy under 13 is allowed to carry on Shabbos outside, allowed to do malachos, chas v'shalom. It is definitely forbidden for a parent to suggest that a child do it. It is even incumbent upon a parent to stop a child that is doing wrong on Shabbos, even if that is an Issa D'Rabbanan. This way, with that kind of a chinuch, a child will be imbued with both a derech, a yidah, an ahava for Hashem, for the Torah, and for the parents, for the wati life of the parents. The mother and the grandparents, relatives should be zochah to see a lot of nachas in this child. Zochah the gadla, the Torah, wishing his zochah to see the korah, the yamenu. You go to shloim and head on
We come to a very favorite topic today. Everyone is wild about this. Ball playing. Shabbos brought about playing ball on Shabbos or Yom Tov. First, we have to understand there are three questions involved. One is the question of Arizal, that is playing outside in the street. That nobody disputes the fact that is awesome. Because carrying anything 4 steps, 4 amis in the street is asr, it's a halacha, actual halacha d'oraisa, or throwing anything 4 steps, 4 amis. So in the street, of course, there's no question about it whatsoever. Next question is the shaila of throwing a ball when it strikes the ground. It could make a dent, which means it's the same as the act of digging. You throw something in the ground, makes a dent, it's like digging. Of course, when you walk on the ground too, it can happen. It's understood. But there's a difference between the normal case or if a person does something with deliberate action, so that there is this question, this problem of Easter of digging. Third, simply the question of posek, whether a ball is posek. Now, the din is brought, the Sefer says that it was forbidden to play ball on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Of course, the question of posek. The law says that it is permissible. But further, we find that the Magen Avraham and the Taz both forbid playing ball on Shabbos. And Yom Tov, too, plus again, the reason it's forbidden is 2 things. One, that it makes a hole, it would cause a hole in the ground. In this case, then, it would be permissible if the ground was made out of cement. There was no earth in the ground. We wouldn't have the gzeda, some places in gzeda, rotsu, atushin rotsu. The ground is cemented. It's excited if we allow that, we might do something wrong, like sweeping, which is not cement. In this case, they say that it's not that serious. Some, according to that one, it would be for this. The Mashal says very simply, the whole idea of playing ball on Shabbos, where let's say it's inside a house, not outside, the ground is cemented, you might have the heter that Avon that is not muktzah, with all that, Mashal says the idea is abhorrent. It's a disgusting idea because it's what he calls a minhag gedah, an evil custom, playing ball on Shabbos or Yom Tov. What then? The children, it is permissible. Even Mashal says. Why? Not that it's advisable, but children are sometimes disobedient. Tell them not to play ball, they'll play ball anyhow. So why tell them and have them disobey orders and do something deliberately? Best thing is don't tell them no, let them play. So at least they do your kashegeg, whatever is considered kashegeg. However, we see that the majority of poskim are opposed to it, definitely. Especially Sephardim have no excuse because the Sefer himself says that it's definitely us to play ball on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So that the final analysis would have the ball playing, if not advisable, will be considered under the chayil, a weekday item, not fit for a day of kedusha, like Shabbos or even Yom Tov. There are some exceptional cases, and at Yom Tov you have children, youth, who for them ball playing would be a pleasure, and if it's in a closed area with solid ground, like solid wood planks, basketball or something like that,
perhaps might be permissible for this youth. But surely it's not the yeshiva kind of youth. Whether that children should be brought up with the knowledge that Shabbos, Yom is Kiddush, and it's very holy, it's a different aura, a different atmosphere. And these items that ball playing is a good exercise, but it's good for the weekdays, but not for these days that are holy. We should be zeichet to conduct ourselves in this Kedusha B'Tara, and we should be zeichet to Syrian Jewish.
Moshe Shabbos. The Shabbos comes up, the Shabbos, especially the Yom Tov, which is a big mezucha, complicated item, a topic which there's a lot of controversy about. It's only because of the fact that people haven't looked into the din carefully enough. So, Moshe haven't asked the Shabbos. You have a Shabbos, you ask it out. So we have a Shabbos, now let's go ask it out. Let's go back to see what Teshuva says. He was a very reliable Rav. Mentioned with the famous Aharon out, and of course, Makim. We shadow about a watch on Shabbos. 2 or 3 items about the general question of a watch. First place, is it permissible to wear a watch on Shabbos? Different item is a tachshit, which means jewelry, not a beggar. Then it's a shadow. If it's a beggar, if it's a garment, of course anybody can wear it. If it's a tachshit, then you put, for a woman, for example, a wristwatch is definitely permissible. Yes, women and jewelry are synonymous. They go together principally. At least one of the words they go together with the other. Really, as far as tachshit and jewelry for women, on Shabbos it is permissible only to wear jewelry. But for a man, we went through that shadow a number of times, that there is a slight heter for it, very slight heter, but it is not advisable. In the case of a watch, in order to be considered a tachshit, it must be at least solid gold. It must have designs or diamonds or rubies or the numerals, so the majority of watches today are not jewelry. They are a utility. They are an item that's used, it's a necessity, but it cannot be classified as jewelry. Again, if it was classified as jewelry, still would not be considered mutter for a man, according to the majority of Deis. Therefore, the best we could say about a wristwatch is that if you see someone wearing it, you know that there's a question of callous. A person who does not take this verse too seriously. You cannot really amend him for committing a sin, because you could find places that would permit it. Moshe Feinstein says it is permissible to wear a wristwatch on Shabbos, but that's for others, not for my Talmidim. Meaning, not for yeshiva people. Those who are b'nei yeshiva, they should definitely avoid at all costs. This is more, of course, speaking about a wristwatch, where it might be considered a beggar. Pocket watch actually is also the whole of days. There is no heter whatsoever for pocket watch. Even if, as the old day, it came with a silver chain attached to it. So, in the final analysis, for a man to wear a wristwatch on Shabbos definitely should not be done. We spoke about that beginning is one of the halachas. I mentioned that I recall I got it in the yeshiva Chaim Balain. The child they attended the yeshiva Chaim Balain in 1899 Prospect Place. It's a good memory. That place today looks like the result of a Holocaust. Looks like the result of the bombing of one of the first cities in the Second World War that withstood. The B'nai HaKodesh, Yeshiva Chaim, withstood different types of assaults. Until finally the Black Plague came and village destroyed it. It was attacked by these arsonists and it was razed to the ground. That right now is an empty lot there, which stands as a very sad monument memory of the greatest yeshiva in the entire United States at that time, yeshiva that produced products, further to be called today's Rosh Yeshivas. In that yeshiva, there was also a shul where we davened. All these places we davened for years there. The father Shalom davened there with others. We stood davened there, and then you could see, Torah unfold before their eyes. The Rosenfeld, that's the wall next to the Kodesh, was inhabited by all the elders, the esteemed, them with long white beards. And they're very fresh in my memory because it used to be Yaakov. As a child, he became indelibly impressed. I recall if there was a visitor, a guest in the shul of some kind, came and asked to be allowed to speak, to make an appeal for something. And he got up on the beam to speak. He moved his arm, and I saw a wristwatch on his arm. A woman went through it, the elders shuddered, gasped. How could this man be allowed to speak in this shul on Shabbos? But in their eyes, he was the Mechal Shabbos, and sorely how strict that court was, that we made this day, so that I know, Fachti Mati B'Al Wayside, and a wristwatch on Shabbos is definitely lesser. That's why we need a wristwatch here for Shulchan, and ways of bringing it. You have to let a woman bring it, but as a man aside, I try my best to avoid worried shul if there are any strangers. Those, of course, who are here, in case you ever entertain any wrong thoughts by some mistake, you know that the watch is brought that is never worn as a show the Shabbos. That's one item. Second question about the mechanism of the watch. By the way, as far as the watch being muktzah, the watch itself in the house, for example, is not considered muktzah. But a large clock is. A grandfather clock, a large grandfather clock, even though it is not an electric clock, is considered muktzah. Electric clock is definitely muktzah. As long as it's attached, electric clock cannot be moved, cannot be hidden. That's as far as muktzah goes.
But a small clock.
Electric clock.
The one's up.
No, it's good. Small clock is the same as a pocket watch or a wristwatch. In your house, it could be used, could be handled. But if it's attached by electricity, then it's muktzah. If it works on battery, it is not muktzah. Very important thing to know. It works on battery, it is not considered muktzah. Well, and the second question is, what about the mechanism of winding a clock or moving the handles, changing the time? In this case, this says definitely that moving the handles or winding a clock when it is not going, surely to be so. Tikuney Zohar. Where the clock is not going, couldn't be, you should get answer. Where the clock is going, too, is also a Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to wind the clock that is going, you're allowed to change the handles of the clock. And that is definitely out. The question is now on Yom Tov. This is where a big controversy comes up. Until now, what we said is practically agreed upon by everyone. Maybe a few exceptions, but sort of agreed. Yom Tov, we come to the problem. There are some who say Yom Tov is easier. For the sake of tzedek Yom Tov, it's tzedek, mutlal tzedek, R Nosson. So they say it before Yom Tov. The Shari Teshuva says it definitely is not so. Yom Tov, on the first day of Yom Tov, you cannot wind a clock. Shadow of changing the time possibly might be permissible. Might be, but it's very inadvisable the first day. But winding a watch or a clock on Yom Tov, the first day is awesome. And it's only on the second day that it is permissible to wind a clock only if it is going. A clock that is stopped, same issue applies to the second day as it does to the first day, or up to Shabbos. And again, the use of a watch, winding a watch, is permissible. Winding is permissible only on the second day Yom Tov, no other time, no Shabbos, no Yom Tov. And of course, this is very important to note, that this excludes the Shashurah. This excludes the Shashurah. The Shashurah is a special din of its own. The Shashurah, the second day Yom Tov, is no different than the first day Yom Tov. It has the same din, more details. For example, one of the most necessary items, vital items, different between the first and second day intake, is the use of medicines. Any medication, aspirins, for example, are forbidden to use on Shabbos and on the first day intake. They are permissible on the second day intake. Medication in the second intake is mutter, is permissible, but not on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, second day is the same day as the first day as far as medicine is concerned. Again, therefore, the winding of a watch is only on the second day intake, but not on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Alright, it was something that is, Baruch Hashem, becoming obsolete. It's the self-winding watch. They are producing less and less of it to the hope that it is completely terminated. It's a self-winding watch, the one that is worn on the wrist, and the movement of the hand winds that watch. In this case, there's a Shiloh. This Shiloh is the one that is the biggest Rebucha. We are actually sparring today. We'll write about the Hilchos Shabbos. Permit the wearing of a self-winding watch. One of the most famous sparring in the world today, the Hilchos Shabbos, accepted by all the known in Israel, has this statement in it. And it's a very big pity that the statement is there, stating that a self-winding watch is permissible to wear on Shabbos. And I believe it's a very sad error. Very sad error because it is a mistake. This Shema, I was fortunate in speaking to the term of Arizal, the local term. We approached him with this Shema. We delved into the Shema very solidly. No question about nothing undone. When I've seen, I've read this Shema, the Sefer, it hasn't touched upon the problems that are involved. Somehow it's been overlooked. These problems have been overlooked. But he was given the Sefer by error. At that time, Rabbi Nachman stated very clearly that wearing a watch, we're not speaking about carrying outside, it wasn't for any house. To wear a watch that is self-worthy is a chilul Shabbos. Because it means that by the movement of the hand, you are wearing a watch. And that all of doing is also on Shabbos. Nobody can do that. Well, why then would anybody say today is permissible? Well, so the share of any mistake. There's no intentions. If you do something without intending to do so, then it will be permissible on Shabbos in many cases. However, if it's stipulation, you don't intend, like say you take the head off a cow. You don't want to kill a cow on Shabbos. You say my intention is not to kill this cow, just to remove the head. And with the head without killing the cow. Well, you know the word, but the fact is it's impossible. The same token, you say, I want to wear the watch without winding it. You may want it, but you cannot wear the watch without winding it because the movement of the hand does with it. That claim is an stipulation because a person could, for a second, rest his arm and he would not be winding it. But it's possible to wear it without winding it. It's true, but at the same time, it's impossible to move. Can you move with the watch, walk with the watch, without running? Because that too, for a moment, it is possible. A person can walk with the watch, the arm being in a definite stationary position, but might not wind the watch. That might be possible, but it's a very difficult play-up situation. But even if we grant all that, that was not the question, that was not the problem at all. Otherwise, if there was an Isur for a person to do anything on Shabbos, to prepare for Sunday, not allowed to wash dishes on Shabbos, for the sake of Sunday, for the sake of Mitzvah Shabbos. You can wash dishes on Friday night for the sake of Shabbos, or on Shabbos morning for the sake of Eid that same day, but not to prepare anything Shabbos to weekdays. If you don't make the beds, for instance, make the need to take the covers off and prepare the bed for sleeping on Shabbos if you intend to use it on Mitzvah Shabbos. Surely you cannot wind a watch on Shabbos that's going to be used on Sunday. In this case, as you move your arm, the watch is wound not for that very second, because when you take the watch off, it is still going. It's adding a reserve amount to the watch. This reserve amount will come into play at the end of it. that this means that on Shabbos you are avoiding moving the watch, wearing it, and then on Sunday it will be going. That is called Menachem Shabbos L'chol, and that the Rabbi Arizal said very emphatically. What kind of the question was brought up, and it was determined very clearly, without any trace of doubt whatsoever, that it is also the tachlis to wear a self-wearing watch on Shabbos. Baruch Hashem, that Shana has clarified then, it comes very much in handy, because since we see that it's a very controversial topic, please, we don't do not doubt. It's important to resolve a suffix being what they avoid. Person is burdened with doubts in halacha. It's very good to have a vadai, it's good to have a sack from a gadol. The Rabbi and Rabbi Arizal was certainly the event asking Shabbos off. But those few times that he did, they were very solid. This is one of the few times that he asked clearly, this is the halacha, and he wasn't the winner. And I want to the halacha when I wrote it. Therefore, it definitely is that a self-wearing watch on Shabbos is also a hechlet, absolutely. Anybody can wear it, man, woman, or child. And to wear a watch is definitely also on Shabbos or the first day at the end time. To wear a watch outside is permissible for women, because for women it's considered even a regular, ordinary watch. The husband is too cheap to buy a nice one. It's still considered a tachshit as probably jewelry for the ornamentation of the women, which is permissible, but not permissible, not advisable, at least for men. If you see someone wearing it, then you cannot become violent about it, to attack him for it, because there are those places who will say that it's passable. But surely for B'nai Yeshiva, I ain't done that. Those who are religious, it should definitely be avoided, because there's definitely a shot of Easter wearing the watch of Shabbos. Overall, you give a watch, and this is all said, a watch is a very precious item. You shouldn't be able to watch not for the sake of the gold, but for the sake of a timepiece and to time the basketball games and other games. Is not why watches are worn. Hashem said this watch down for a person to watch the time and look at this watch and be fascinated and watch how life goes by. Every second it ticks by, life is going by. And account for it. See, the second that passed, what did you do with your life? The person watching that was a secret of this is our success, right, is being able to write so many svarim, more svarim than the human brain can imagine is possible for one individual to write. Not just writing, so not only copying a svarim will take you years. But these are svarim that are invented. These are chidushei Torah. The Halacha says a tremendous amount of chidushei Torah there that are far above and beyond the capacity of a normal girl even. But as long as possible to convert to the Likutei Manani, to the Likutei Tfilos, to write the life histories of Arizal, to write letters for it. And then, in addition to that, to write so many letters, correspondence, hundreds of letters, correspondence with people, and to speak to so many people about the Shemona, about this Tarvis, to live the life of so much as prejudice. All this was, and this is all, to live many lives. It would take a person hundreds of years to accomplish what he did. What was the secret of his being able to do so? He simply watched the seconds. And then you'll say, you think that certainly is impossible. If you watch, in and of itself, that he was able to learn a few dafim of Shulchan Aruch, when there was no time at all. In the period of no time, that's those seconds I went lost, learned what it is I was going to do how many dafim each day. This is because the seconds of the watch were watched carefully. I was very particular about how you watch the exact time. In this case, each second of the time was a careful sport. Because it was written in posek Aharon, brought by Aharon was old. It was old. It reached the old age. But before Aharon means it came into the old age, but first the music came Vayamid with the days. He came with all his days he cared for. As old as he was, that's the days that he cared for. Now he lived all those days. Which preserved to live properly. There was a famous saying, this will unite and shake. Even a person
very young, as today's young son does. Today's Nosson Hashem, very young believers. How I watching the Torah, studying this kind of that's what's good about living world, which is not the real world of slavery, the Hashem succession. So he gives the Arizal to see what Aharon so that the US got taken away with it. The first Shabbos that he looks at. The person has a item, for example, a wallet, money, which is definitely books on Shabbos. He has a barrel of wine, a cat. Before Shabbos, he placed this wallet on top of the barrel of wine. He wants to use this wine for Shabbos. But in order to move the barrel of wine, he's got to move the wallet with money. He's going to have to move muktzah. So how does he remove the muktzah from this barrel of wine? The thing is that we can take this barrel of wine and take it over so that the wallet of money could fall to the floor. Then he can use the wine. Because he's not really going to move the barrel of wine with the muktzah on it. He's just bending it over. That's partial tiltul, partial handling of muktzah. Of course, the muktzah itself does not touch at all. Bend the barrel of wine over, and the muktzah falls to the floor, you can use the barrel of wine. If, however, the barrel of wine is situated in a place where you cannot bend it, let's say you have a lot of barrels of wine next to the other, but one end you can place this wallet of money. Then, only then he's allowed to lift the barrel of wine, and once he has it lifted, once he's moved it out of place, then he's allowed to carry it to wherever he wants, then to bend it over and drop the wallet of money. And this is a special thing that where a person is able to move muktzah, you could say it's in his hand already, he's got to let it go. Once in his hand, he's allowed to move with it until he gets to a stop. But if he finds he has muktzah in his hand, then he can go, speaking of course not about carrying, but about himself, not about muktzah in the house. As long as he has the muktzah in his hand, he can walk with it wherever he wants and drop it off from there. Moving with it, going with it, it doesn't change, doesn't matter how far, how much he moves it. Once he has started, the rest is permissible. And this, of course, this whole rule applies only if he needs the wine in the barrel. But when he just wants to get the muktzah itself out of that place, and wants that muktzah that is walked out of place, that is posek. The only reason why he's allowed to move that muktzah in a roundabout way directly is because he needs the wine in the barrel. And if he does not need the wine in the barrel, or let's say the barrel itself needs to barrel it, then he submit to have that muktzah moved off. The first step is a series of dinim called posek with Dover or Osir. At times, an item which is not muktzah can become a basis for something which is muktzah, and what happens to that bottom item? What happens to that lower item, regular item, the non-muktzah item? So far we have already a case where the barrel of wine, which was the buses, was permissible to be moved. That was only because the muktzah had been placed on this barrel of wine by inadvertently. They had not intended to put it there. They don't have the intended to on this issue. But it's never to the Yerushalmi. Okay, Shabbos dinim muktzah. We are now on a complicated, complex set of dinim called posek with Dover ha'asur. Basis, something which is a basis for a muktzah item. Which means you have a regular item, the example we give is a barrel of wine, which is permissible to be used on Shabbos. And on top of that barrel of wine we have a wallet of money. money is muktzah, the barrel of wine is a basis for this money. Because of the fact that the money is on it, this barrel could become muktzah too. Could become. The first thing we said was that if a person forgets, before Shabbos he forgets, accidentally leaves this wallet of money on the barrel of wine, forgets means that he had intended to take it off before Shabbos. But he forgot. The barrel of wine has not become muktzah, and he cannot touch the money, so he's allowed to bend the barrel of wine over, let the money fall off it, and then he can use that wine. However, the now is, what if he placed this wallet on the barrel before Shabbos with knowledge? Put it there because he wanted to leave it there for a while. Now, if he put it there with knowledge ahead of Shabbos, then even if on Shabbos somehow this wallet was taken away, this money was taken away by a goy or for some other reason, it was let's say money was blown away by the wind, and now after Shabbos began, this money was removed. The barrel of wine, because it became a basis of davar ha'asur when Shabbos began, remains muktzah for the rest of Shabbos. It is so muktzah that it acquires the same identity as the muktzah that is on it or was on it. Money is muktzah, even you cannot move money away and be that spot for it. Then the barrel of wine too also has the same rule that applies to it. You cannot move that barrel even if you get that spot. So this is the severity of buses. It becomes the same as the muktzah that it carries. Now, this is if he placed it before Shabbos with the intention of leaving it for Shabbos. What if he had placed it on the barrel a few days before Shabbos, and then he forgot to remove it? He placed it with the intention of leaving, putting it there. If he had to remove this before Shabbos, it is then permissible on Shabbos. We can then move it as though it was forgotten rather than placed deliberately. This is if it was put there a few days before Shabbos. But if it was put there ahead of Shabbos, even with the intention of taking it off before Shabbos, forgot to do so, then according to the Beis Yosef it is mutter, according to the other posek it is osir. The number of pasuk like the most other posek can follow that Halacha, that ahead of Shabbos cannot be helped. Ahead of Shabbos is a time when a person should be aware of the fact that Shabbos is coming. So the person is not absent-minded. He places something on a thing which is not muktzah. The intention of taking it off before Shabbos, and he doesn't take it off, he forgets. It's the same as having left it deliberately, and the thing becomes a basis for davar ha'asur. So in a word, anything which is a basis becomes a basis through the fact the item was left there, was placed there with knowledge. Then the thing becomes asur for the entire Shabbos, even though the muktzah had been removed. Unless the item was placed there by mistake, unintentionally, then it is mutter. Remember about the dinner, which will take up into Shabbat. Shabbos did a muktzah din basis l'davar ha'asur. The Chiddush brought the Adam that in case a person has a drawer, he happens to throw stuff in there haphazardly, it's not considered as though he put something down, muktzah, on top of something which is not muktzah. It was not intended to make the other stuff basis l'davar ha'asur. So you have in a drawer silverware, and on it you have, say, a pen or something, have to be thrown in. It doesn't make the silverware basis l'davar ha'asur. You're allowed to shake off the pen and take out the silverware. This just means that he was not neat. He was sloppy in putting the stuff in the drawer. It wasn't intended to put it down. Unless he's very neat, there he pays a price. If he's very neat, put the stuff down exactly with the muktzah on top of the non-muktzah. And afterwards he realized that Shabbos is too late, then of course it is us. Now, if a person has both muktzah and non-muktzah on top of something, it does not make the item buses unless the non-muktzah is more valuable than the muktzah. Therefore, it's a very important halacha when lighting candles ahead of Shabbos. This is the reason why, before a woman lights candles, she must see to it that the challahs are on the table. Actually, of course, if you have silverware on the table or dishes, it will serve the same purpose. But it's much better and much nicer if you have the challahs on the table, because then it serves both purposes. The table looks set up for Shabbos, she lights candles. Also, the challahs are non-muktzah. Candles are muktzah. To have them both on the table, the candles alone would make the table a basis to davar asur, which means you cannot move that table 1 inch after that. Whereas if the challahs are there, even though the candles are there too, you're allowed to move the table because the table is then a basis for davar asur and mutter. Of course, you now have challahs and candles. Challahs are non-muktzah. This rule applies. This means that it must be on exactly as Shabbos begins. It's not good if you put the challahs on after Shabbos begins, and it is not good if you put the challahs on at the time of candle lighting and remove it before Shabbos begins. The challahs must be on during the time that Shabbos enters. Of course, the question arises, what if the candlesticks are made of pure silver, gold, iridium, platinum? What about how could challahs, which used to cost 20 cents a piece, today they cost about $8, how could they outmatch the price of these silver candlesticks? The answer is that it's not the silver candlesticks that are muktzah, it's the candles, it's the fire, which is not worth as much as the challahs, so that the thicker muktzah is worth less than the price, the value of the challahs. This, of course, we said was a shadow long, but today it's no longer a shadow, because today the price of challahs has risen to a point where it begins to rival the candlesticks too. So that if the challahs are there together with the candlesticks, with the candles as they are being lit, the table may be moved. To add an additional point, it's very controversial. Not very controversial, very simple, but it was controversial at one time for no reason, unjustifiably. The whole story behind this is not the time for it. But if the candles are lit on the table, it is permissible to move the table while the candles are on it, not the candlesticks, even while the candles are on it and burning. Move the table, or you're moving the candlesticks with it, with the candles burning, moving the fire, which of course, in which case you must be careful that it doesn't go past the place where there's a wind. Well, the movement itself should extinguish the flames, but if there's no wind and you're careful not to extinguish the candles, you're allowed to move the table with the burning candles on it. That is definitely permissible to be moved on Shabbos. We should be zeichet to be carrying the mitzvah Shabbos Gil Chasson, the emes, and to see the yinu of all the Yisrael. Shabbos Dini Muktzah, Dinei Basis, and Davar Ha'asur. Additional din is that a person, we said, who places something muktzah on davar she'eino muktzah before Shabbos begins, and for the rest of the Shabbos, the non-muktzah item becomes asur because it is a basis. Even if the muktzah was removed during Shabbos, it remains asur for the entire Shabbos. However, it is though that one person cannot be aiser, so he belongs to a second person. If you're a guest in somebody's house, you do him a favor by putting your wallet on top of his keys. You don't make it asur for him to use his keys. You can't be asur something which belongs to someone else. So it's only a person who does it to his own things, but not to somebody else's. But of course, a wife could do it to her husband. It's guf echad. It's in the family. A stranger to the person cannot do it to someone else. As we said, there's a bit of muktzah machmas chisaron kis. Muktzah because something that's very valuable. a tradesman's item. For example, a whale, his precious weapon is his emerald, the knife he uses. It's a very special kind of knife, very sharp. It's honed to a special sharpness. It's expensive. It's made to cut perfectly. One single cut and the thing is done. That's the way a regular nail does it. So it should be, and not more. It's more than Islam. The Taz says this knife is muktzah on Shabbos when it's not in use. So in the morning, when the male finishes using that knife, what happens is still in his hand. The second he finishes making the cut, the knife becomes muktzah. When a person is holding a double muktzah in his hand, he is allowed to place it wherever he wants. As long as it's still in his hand, he can move it to wherever he wants and put it down. So, therefore, the whale has to be careful to put this knife, as he puts it down, put it into a place that's well guarded. There's no sake. He wants the knife to be safe. Now, of course, he's in a hurry to finish this. He comes immediately after the chituf, the cutting. So he has to have the special box for the knife handy at the side, put it down in that special place, and then know that there's no more chance for him to correct, to move this. If he forgets and puts it down on the table, then that knife remains quick and touch. The law and the Shach and Yehuda say that as long as he hasn't put it down yet, as long as he hasn't put it away yet, he is allowed to put it away. The other pasuk like the Lord Shach and the Eved, that in the Eved, if he happened to put it down, not in the place where it's guarded, it's not considered as though he really put it down yet, complete action, and he's allowed to move it to a place which is guarded, well guarded, even though it was put down, but that's b'diavad. The Chatchila, of course, all agree the whale should put it in a place that's guarded immediately, not after. If he did, he can still put it somewhere else, and the Chachmas Adon asks like the Aruch Zohar in this case, and it is permissible for a person a whale to put it away. We should be of course you can learn a lot of halachas with this. The person uses this common sense. We should be to guard our precious items, our precious tools, the Shema, which is so precious to us. We should treat it properly, give into it, pamper it properly, let the goof be a servant for the Shema, not Chas V'Shalom the opposite. We have a body which should do actions for the sake of the Shema, for the sake of mitzvahs. That way when we kiruv to Hashem, part of the Shekhinah, is there for the Syrian Jewish Tukei Shabbos, Bidei, Posek Mikrover Ha'asa. As we said, an item becomes muktzah itself if it has anything muktzah on it at the time that Shabbos begins. What if it has both muktzah and non-muktzah on it? How is it judged? He said that it depends upon the value. If there is more muktzah on it, it becomes less than a double asa. Less muktzah, if the heter that is permissible is more than the muktzah, it remains mutter. Therefore, on Friday, like today, you must be careful. When it comes to candle lighting, there should be the candles on the table plus the chalas. Chalas, which are worth more than the candle fire, the fire, especially in today's inflation. The fire didn't go up. Now, the best thing, of course, is the chalas, because of the kedusha of the chalas, symbol of the chalas. In fact, anything at all would be sufficient if it was worth more than the candles. But it must be there, not at the time of candle lighting, it must be at the time when Shabbos actually begins. Now, the question is, what determines the value? How do we appraise the value? We we say that the non-muktzah must be worth more than the muktzah to make it non-busted of else. What if the value in his eyes is great? He has an old cup. The cup is made of, it's already very thin, worn out silverware, silver cup. It's completely worn out, and on the market you couldn't get 2 cents for it. To him, it's a relic. To him, it's something which is a remembrance, let's say, you inherited it, something of sentimental value. He wouldn't take $100 for it. It's worth 2 cents, he wouldn't take $100 for it. On the table you have books worth $50. Is this considered more than the other? The answer is that we go by his value and not the value of the world. Generally, his daya is bottle bigger than ever. In this case, it's what's worth to him. Therefore, at the same time, he can get into trouble because let's say that he has the candles on the table. He also has on the table a crystal dish. Pure imported crystal that is so expensive it could cost hundreds of dollars. His opinion, his wife got this dish, he would pay somebody $20 to get it out of the house. If you sneak it out, drop it out of the top window of the roof, anything, then it's a monstrosity, and it's not worth anything at all. It's less than zero. He's happy to give it away for nothing, but he couldn't find some ducks to take it. Yet, of course, in the eyes of the world, this is a very precious item. It's rose quartz or it's crystalware. So in the eyes of the world, it's worth a few $100. In his eyes, the flame of the candle is much more light than that dish. The result is that this dish does not help him at all. It's considered muktzah. Of course, we go by his value, his appraisal, not by the appraisal of the world. Now, too, we said that in moving this item, in the telltale, something which is not movable. For instance, this item has, this non-muktzah out of a barrel of wine, has on it the muktzah, which was forgotten. Placed there, so you have to make the barrel of wine muktzah, but you have to move it in order to get the muktzah off it. You can move it in that sat. It's called tiltul min hatzat. You're moving the muktzah, but not by touching it. That is permissible. Move it with your foot, so on. It's permissible to move muktzah that way. It's not directly moving it. Direct tiltul min hatzat. Now this, of course, is permissible only if it's for the sake of a non-muktzah item. You need the barrel of wine. But to say that tiltul min hatzat is mutter to move the muktzah, and so you'd rather have the wallet of money than a drawer. The kids wouldn't get to it. So then you're not allowed to move the muktzah outside. You got to cover it or else slap the kid's hands or whatever it is, but you cannot move muktzah outside unless it's for the sake of the non-muktzah item, or let's say for the sake of the place that this muktzah is covered, is occupying. You need this spot on the table. You need it for the sake of putting dishes, food. Muktzah's on it. You then move the muktzah min hatzat. Move the side of your elbow or something like that. Because, not because of the sake of the muktzah, but for the sake of the muktzah, the place of the muktzah. Then it is permissible outside. We should be zeichet to the valley, activated, and remove all muktzah from ourselves, muktzah machasviyas, muktzah machas isa, kaddish ourselves in emes, and be zeichet to see Yerushalmi.